we are here representing the U.S. Virgin Islands to get a feel for the international travel space. And through our research, conversations with CTO, we recognize that this is a perfect place for us to gather important information on international travel to the U.S. Virgin Islands.
International markets that are important to you from a European perspective traditionally have been Denmark as well as Italy. Your thoughts about the strength of these markets and perhaps broadening beyond that?
Yeah, well, we always have a linkage forever with Denmark as the United States purchased the United States Virgin Islands in 1917 from Denmark. So we continue to build that relationship with the Danish people. And then secondly, we've always had a strong relationship with Italy. We continue to leverage that in terms of our relationships inside the country. We've seen a good return in travelers from Italy to the USVI. We have begun having conversations with the UK and the countries surrounding it because of connectivity into the Caribbean. So we are beginning to build relationships to get people that fly into the Caribbean from the UK to try to make trips over to the USVI.
And there's obviously a connection between the US and the US Virgin Islands, getting British travelers and other European travelers to the US and then onto the US Virgin Islands in a domestic space. Is this an opportunity?
Yes. One of the things that we appreciate, particularly in this side of the world, is that the vacation times seem to be longer than the US travelers. So there's opportunities when they make the trip across the Atlantic Ocean. What we've seen is they tend to stay at least 2 weeks. And they spend one in the continental U.S. and then one somewhere in the Caribbean. We're hoping that one of those weeks can be in the USVI.
Tell us how tourism is performing in the U.S. Virgin Islands, both from a stayover perspective as well as cruise.
Yeah, we've been doing extremely well. We have continued to perform at the highest levels in the Caribbean during COVID and post-COVID, both stayover. Of course, our cruise ship business has come back more robust and faster than we thought. In terms of the build-up. So we're grateful for that. Right now we expect to see in this upcoming cruise season our best numbers since COVID. And that continues to build, of course. On the stayover side, St. Thomas, St. John continue to perform very, very strong in terms of overnight ADRs. RevPARs are very, very strong. Our airlift continues to be very strong. And then St. Croix. We continue to invest in the brand at Vive Like No Other, and we are starting to see some of the returns start to come in terms of lift, which is critical for stayover. And our cruise numbers are up significantly, almost 300% since before COVID, and we expect to see about 130% increase this year in cruise traffic.
Your thoughts on tourism's impact in terms of socio-economic development in the U.S. Virgin Islands? How important is it, and do people really understand the strength of this industry?
Yeah, well, clearly based on the economic data, we represent over 65% of the direct, indirect to our GDP. Now, with regards to do people fully understand, I think it's always one of these things that directly, if you work in the business, you work in a hotel, or you work at ground transportation, or you work in the airports, you directly see the impact. I think the indirect impact is not as visible as we would like to see. And I'll give you an example. So you have a local restaurant and taxi drivers come in to eat on a given day. And you say, well, I don't know how that's impacted from tourism. Well, the taxi driver made money that day, which allows them to go out and spend having things that they may not ordinarily do. Or when they have breakfast before they get to the dock for a cruise ship day, it's anticipating money's coming in. And those are examples of indirect ways that the tourism business helps. And I always tell people the unfortunate side is early parts of COVID, when we didn't have any traffic. People didn't have jobs, they didn't have anything to go to. And then lastly, I think the impact is really felt because many people that work in the tourism space are hourly workers that don't have paid time off. So if they're not working, they're not making money. So all of those things I think are impactful. And we continue to try to educate populace in the USVI of the importance of tourism. Like we say, tourism is all of us. So we hope that people continue to follow that mantra.
Finally, you've been focused on sports tourism and working with a lot of sporting teams stateside. Your thoughts on the fruit of this particular strategy? Yeah,
well, we work with right now 4 franchises directly: the New York Jets, Chicago Cubs, Boston Red Sox, and the New York Mets in areas, and they represent 3 of our big areas that people travel from: the tri-state area, the New England area, and the Chicago and suburbs areas. And what we have found is in each one of these areas that we have invested in these partnerships, we've seen an increase in trips to the territory on a weekly basis. And of course, that translates into more seats and ultimately more people that come to vacation in the territory.
It's Caribbean Tourism Month. Final thoughts on the importance of this CTO celebration focusing on resilience this year?
Yeah, well, I think those of us that live in the Caribbean, and particularly those of us that live in the hurricane belt, we live resilience, right? Because we've been hit with hurricanes. I think there's another one going through. The hurricane prayers out for those islands that may be in its path, especially this late in the season. So we understand resilience. And I think the CTO, what it does is it helps brings all of us together so that we all can understand from each other's stories and how we are resilient. And it differs in each island and it's based on economies, based on percentage of tourism. And then lastly, I think it is important for us to recognize that the Caribbean as a region is stronger when we're united as opposed to when we separate fighting against one another.